Welcome to the After Chat. I'm Michael.
I'm Ellis.
I'm Madison.
And today we are going to be talking about, well, when anxiety spirals. There we go. You all ready?
Ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the After Chat. Real questions. Real talk. Real life.
All right. So, where's everybody's favorite place to eat? Like, mine changes over time. So, where's your favorite place now?
Currently, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also feel like I cover this topic a lot. So,
Subway?
For the sake of not repeating, let me go down the list. Raising Cane's just opened in Midlothian. Has anybody been?
I
It's a chicken
went.
place?
I've not.
I
Oh,
went
is that
off-
the chicken strip joint?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
no,
that one.
I've seen it, but I've not been.
Yeah.
I went off of your recommendation.
It is very good.
It was good.
Get the bread for the side. The bread is...
Get the bread.
Get the bread.
Get that bread.
Get that bread. Yeah.
Chicken's hit or miss, but the bread is on point.
Honestly, it is that good.
The
And
bread?
Yeah. It's like
What-
toast. It's like garlic toast, basically.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, it's good.
there we go.
Yeah. It's not my favorite restaurant, though. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's not really mine either. I just didn't want to repeat the
Oh,
same one.
I'm sorry. You had a list.
No.
and
I wasn't going to
stopped
go
you.
down the list. Like, just keep going back on YouTube, and you'll see all the other ones I mentioned. So, no, I'm only going to mention that one for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go also very classic, basic. I'm sorry, Chick-fil-A. I know I said it with the favorite sandwich question that it was Chick-fil-A, but I'm sorry.
You're good.
I'm
you're
sorry.
Good, we're good. Everybody just type shame in the comments.
At least it was now instead of later. That was my afternoon prayer alarm that I will reschedule. I looked at my calendar before I set that. Okay.
Just gonna
Sorry, God.
reschedule prayer real quick.
But no, I like Chick-fil-A too. Like, so one of my favorite sandwiches from there. So,
Oh, we're not cutting.
No, we're not.
Okay.
No.
this is real talk.
we're already this far in.
Yeah.
So, like one of my favorite sandwiches from Chick-fil-A, spicy chicken.
Yes.
All right, with bacon. All right, so you get the bacon on there. Then you order a side of mac and cheese. Put the mac and cheese on the sandwich. Hit it with a little bit of that Polynesian sauce. I'm telling you, I know.
Okay, I'm sorry you lost me at the Polynesian
Yeah,
sauce.
I know. It doesn't sound like it would be good, but I'm telling you, I saw a picture of that sandwich on Facebook, then thought about it for 6 months, and then decided I was going to go get it, put it all together in the car, and crushed it and loved it.
Now I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm a little bit intrigued.
No, I'm telling you. Try it. It's good. Yeah, one of those situations. But I'm telling you,
I
like,
saw-
I mean, you're going to be sick for 3 days, but it's going to be fantastic.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah.
I saw like a while ago people were talking about getting nuggets and fries and like cutting them up and then like putting sauce in on. It was basically like making Chick-fil-A nachos but with fries and nuggets and sauce and mac and cheese or I don't know. It looked really good, but I never tried that one. So I'm going to have to step it up.
No,
and try your suggestion.
Give it a whirl. It is super, super good.
All right, I'll let you know.
Yes. So, my favorite restaurant changes over time. Like right now, like I'm on this Allen's Chinese kick here in Powhatan. Like I go like years
He
upon
knows
years
all
upon
about that
years.
place.
But like I'm on a sesame chicken situation at the moment where I'm getting it like once a week. Like love it.
That's me, but with sweet and sour chicken for like maybe a month, and then I get bored with it.
Yeah.
But I just, every few months, I'm just like, all I want is sweet and sour chicken.
Yeah. No lie. Before we sat down to record this, my wife texted me and was like, you know what sounds really good right now? Allen's. And I was like, she doesn't always say that. So I was like, dinner tonight?
There you go.
I'm going to bet right now, and you'll have to text me later. This is her order.
Okay.
Shirley Temple.
Yeah. That's safe. That's a safe assumption.
Beef and broccoli.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna knock that one out of the park. Just let me know. I
think
think I'm gonna guess right.
I think it's a safe
It's
bet.
the only thing she's ever ordered from Madison.
But the other restaurant that I'm really feeling at the moment is Press Club in Farmville.
Oh,
Their Robin Roberts burger is phenomenal.
I haven't been there.
It's fantastic.
When I lived in Farmville, that was my favorite restaurant.
Yes.
And one time I ordered from them for like delivery food, and I ordered a salad. And what showed up? God knew. God knew. What showed up, it was also from that restaurant, but it was two of like their like breakfast burgers. And so it was a giant burger with fig jam and bacon and a fried egg on top.
Yes. No, that one's super good. I forgot
like,
the name of that one,
fries.
but it is super, super good.
But the waffle fries that came with it were sweet potatoes, so I basically still had a salad. But
Oh, yeah.
That counts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a yam.
Yeah, it was like the middle of COVID. God knew I did not need to have a salad. He's like, she needs a blessing. And I got
She needs
two
a
burgers.
blessing.
2 burgers for the price of a salad.
No, that burger's phenomenal. But the Robin Roberts one with, I forgot the name of the sauce, but it's a super good sauce. It's like a chutney type deal, and it's got bacon, avocado. Like, it's just a delicious, delicious burger.
They also just have a really cool atmosphere.
They really do.
It's a great restaurant.
And they do music on, like, live music on the reg. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's an awesome restaurant.
If you live near Farmville, you should check out
Yes.
the great local restaurant that is Press Club.
I'm going to have to go check it
I
out.
highly recommend it.
Yes.
Good choice.
No, that's a good one. All right, so we're going to be talking about anxiety, how it affects us, what we do with it. So just to kind of get into that conversation, just, little tippy toe into it. So, like, what do you do to decompress after a stressful day? Like, you get in your car, you're done working, like, you've just been like, man, today sucked. Like, what do you do?
I don't know that I have many days that I end at that point at work. I think probably my stressful moments are, maybe earlier in the day, I guess, and I worked through it at that point. So I'm usually just tired, maybe not stressed, but tired. So I leave my shoes on when I get home until everything is like back where it belongs. Otherwise, what gets me more stressed out is when stuff is chaotic. So I put everything home, and then I try to stay off screens, and I try to just read. Sometimes I'll get sucked into it. Sometimes it's like fighting it to actually get into the book. But avoiding social media and
That
just
helps.
reading a good book.
Well, the day you described was basically my day yesterday. So last night, I went home. I took a hot shower. That's usually step one for me. Yeah, I like to, wash away the day and all that stuff. Then I put on some pajamas because, like, I'm not kidding, y'all. I'm serious about pajamas, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's like the
There's
signal,
a mental switch.
right? Yes. It's like I am done for the day. When I put on pajamas, that's it. I'm shutting it down for the day. So I put on my pajamas.
Shut it
Then
down.
I went out in the living room and watched a little bit of the Princess Diaries because that's what my wife was watching. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do anything that doesn't involve heavy thinking about work, right?
It's a feel-good movie.
Yes. I popped a bowl of popcorn. I sat there. I watched. And then she decided she was going to go to bed, fired up the Xbox, and then I went to bed. It was great. So that was the strat.
That sounds like a nice night.
Yeah. No, usually I find it helpful just to talk out loud in the car. Like, I will turn off, like, I'll just ride in silence, and I'll just be like, usually start with, I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but, like, start out just with some sort of God, I feel statement. Like, that's usually, and then I just verbally diarrhea everywhere, because he's God. He can handle it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying anything he hasn't heard before.
Yep,
So
that's true.
that's usually how my decompression starts, and then it's usually some sort of shift into like sweatpants and a t-shirt whenever I get home. Like, that is also a mental switch for me as well.
Yes.
I just always get into pajamas almost as soon as I get home, regardless of my stress level. I shouldn't have to wear jeans
That's
when
valid.
I'm at home.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can agree on that.
So, do you remember the first time you felt anxiety? Like, do you have a vivid memory?
I do.
Okay.
I walked up. I can't remember how old I was, but I was young, and I walked up to somebody who, from the back, I thought was my mom at church, was not my mom, and this person, I'm sure, was trying to be very kind, but my child heart took it as they were laughing at me. Then I walked up to the wrong person, and I felt like your gut like drops, and you're like, ugh. Yeah, vivid memory of that feeling.
It's hard for me to pinpoint, honestly, and for reasons that I'll get into in a little bit. But I think the first thing that pops to mind is like anything like in school where you had to talk in front of the class, especially if you had to walk up to the front of the room and do it. That, like the sweaty hands and the shaky, like all that stuff, like that. That's the first thing that pops into my brain.
I did have one experience. So this was after my first memory, but I had a singing solo when I went to private school. I was mostly homeschooled, but I went to private school for like a portion of a school year, and I got a solo in the Christmas concert.
Still
just,
a high point.
Like brushing back the hair that's tied up. And I was supposed to sing the beginning of the Christmas song, and I sang Jack Frost roasting on an open fire, chestnuts nipping at your nose.
Nice. Little switcheroo situation.
Yeah. Nobody seemed to notice, so I think I got away with it, but I was really scared.
I think for me, I mean, I don't have a distinct. I remember a situation where I felt it, but it was I got lost, like separated from my mom at like a Walmart or out in the Midwest. We had a store called a Pamida, which is kind of like a low rent Walmart at the time. They don't even exist anymore.
That's a great name.
No, it's a nice one. It feels nice coming out of your mouth. Pamida.
Pamida.
Yeah, hit it one time.
Pamida.
There we go.
I like
Pamida. Come back.
Yeah. So anyway, I got separated from my mom at the Pamida, and I remember walking around yelling, "Mom, Mom," and
that's so scary.
Yeah, so that was a very anxiety-filled moment for me.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So that was, but the store name that brought back a nice memory though. Pamida.
Pamida.
All right.
Shout out Pamida.
Yeah. Wherever you are, like whoever. Like, yeah. So, anyway, so we're gonna talk. So, like we talked about at the beginning, we're gonna be looking at like what it looks like for us whenever anxiety spirals. So, just to get us kind of going, like, what was your experience with it? Background with anxiety? What does it feel like for you whenever you feel it?
So I have I have been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, but I have very different experiences when it is situational anxiety versus non-situational anxiety. So sometimes I do just have this underlying current of dread that I'm feeling. Currently, I am on some medication that does really help with that, so I don't have to deal with that non-situational anxiety anymore. The situational anxiety is like, I kind of described it earlier, like I feel like my stomach drop and like this sense of dread and almost like I'm fighting the urge to just curl in on myself. I also, depending on what I'm experiencing, I can really struggle with hyperventilation. So that's how I experience it. My background is not, there's not a whole lot with it. Just my parents didn't know a whole lot about anxiety. I grew up homeschooled, so I wasn't around people that I felt like I could really relate to on that level. And because of that, I developed some really negative coping skills. So that's my background.
Well, for me, like anxiety and mental illness, it wasn't what it was. It wasn't what it is today when I was growing up, right? So as a child, like we didn't really talk about it much in my house. So most of my knowledge or experience with it is like more recent and through others, like friends and people I'm close with today. But like I would say the last 2 years maybe, like is where I've really started to explore what anxiety looks like for me. And so in situations where I'm stressed or overwhelmed, like unpacking, okay, what are the, like identifying what are those feelings and unpacking them is kind of where I'm at right now. So for me, it looks like, I would say, kind of like a fog in my brain. Like I can't really clearly articulate or pinpoint what my feelings are, what my thoughts are. like a little shortness of breath kind of deal. I used to get like shaky hands, or like I would clench a lot. So things like that are kind of what it looks like for me. So
we had a couple weeks ago, our third service here at Powhatan. The power went out in the middle of the service. Terrifying. For those who don't know, my job is the tech coordinator here at our Powhatan campus. So everything that my job entails lost power, and I was in the restroom.
Oh, jeez.
Using the restroom when the power went out. You don't need another visual for that. But like, I freaking booked it. I booked it out into. You were running around doing something important, and for like the rest of the service, because we just kind of continued the best we could. My hands like would not stop shaking. I kind of forgot that's something that I experienced until you said that.
For me, I think my first like realization that I think that I had like some sort of anxiety developed whenever I was in middle school somewhere. Like we had a major family trauma that just really, it made my home life chaotic, and I just didn't really feel secure in it. And so like, because everything was so up in the air, and I didn't know, I developed negative coping mechanisms. And I think that does more long-term damage whenever you're experiencing something that you don't know what to do with as a kid.
Oh yeah.
And then it all kind of went on the back burner. Like, I think I just kind of grew out of it, like as high school went on and I went into adulthood. But whenever I got out of the military, and I've mentioned here before, like I went to Iraq and got flesh-eating disease and all of the things. And I got out and I just developed a real issue with PTSD and social anxiety. And so it was in that like mid to late 20s where it all really kind of fired up, and I still had all of those negative coping mechanisms in place. And so that just kind of lasted for a long time. But it really feels kind of like what you mentioned a minute ago. If it's really high stress, it feels like I'm hyperventilating. I get shortness of breath. And I get just racing thoughts of like all of the things that could possibly go wrong. Like I start just doing a series of if-then statements, but in like hyperspeed, in my mind.
I think the most annoying thing with the way that I experience anxiety is that sometimes it doesn't kick in until after the thing has already happened. And then I'm like, well, what's the point of this? I was driving the other day, and I was with my friend, and I hit a patch of ice, and I couldn't avoid it, and I could feel my car going one way and then going, and there was an oncoming car. Totally flipped out, and I just started yelling Jesus. It worked. Hey, he heard me. But like afterwards, the thing had already been like, it had already happened. We were okay, and I started hyperventilating while driving, and I had to pull over, and she had to take over driving. I'm like, what? I got through it. I did it. It's just, it can be really annoying.
Especially whenever you're in the middle of it and you realize in your mind that it's not rational.
Yeah.
Like,
if
that's what's probably,
yes,
that's what's the most frustrating. Because before, like, it would just happen and I couldn't, like, separate my thoughts from what I was feeling. Like, it was all intertwined. But once you have been working through how to cope with it in a more healthy way, you begin to differentiate, like, what you're experiencing from what you know to be true. At least that's kind of my thing with it. And I'm just like...
I'm still getting there.
and so for me, it's like, why is my body doing this whenever I know that it doesn't need to?
Yeah. I get that, too. Like, sometimes it's like, my brain is like, okay, like, this happened. There's nothing you can do about it. So... stop. Like, stop reacting, essentially, and everything else is not stopping. And it's like, so, like, on top of everything else, you're in this state of like, what's going on? Like, I don't. Yes. It's like, it's
maddening.
I can't even put words to it, really. So there you go.
Just a.
Yeah.
One of those.
That works.
Sometimes. Before we get into the back half of this discussion, take a look at this clip.
God never promises that he will just give you whatever you want, whatever you ask for. But he does promise to give you what you most need. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Would I like for all my problems to go away, to never have any problems again, ever? Oh, you bet I would. And would I like to never be anxious about anything at all? Of course. And you would too. But we're grown-ups. That's not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. Jesus, in fact, told his followers, you're going to have trouble. He predicted it. It's certainly been true in my life and in the life of every follower of Jesus I've ever met. So since we know that problems and challenges and even crises are going to come our way, and since we all know that life is hard sometimes, and since we know by experience that life does not always work out the way that we want, what can we do? Well, when we're anxious, we can, through prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present our requests to God. And then we have access to the greatest gift, the peace of God that will blow people's minds, including yours. The kind of peace that makes no sense. The kind of peace that will stop people in their tracks while they stand in front of you, jaw on the ground, and say something like, how is it that you can have peace in a moment like this?
So like Brian was saying, we have access when we're feeling anxious and overwhelmed to the peace of God. Mm-hmm. And that's, obviously an incredible gift.
Yeah.
We also have some tools that we can implement and use in our lives to help us deal with this too. So we figured we would share some of those with y'all. Mm-hmm. So I'll go first. Like I was saying a little bit before, I'm just now kind of coming to a place where I'm like, okay, anxiety is present enough in my life for me to take it seriously and to kind of try some tools and see what works for me. So these feel super basic to me, but this is kind of what I'm working with right now.
Yeah.
So first of all, count slowly down from 10 to 1.
Mm-hmm. A classic.
When you're hyperventilating, you're feeling like it, and your heart's pounding real fast, I think that is a really quick and easy one to try to bring that down a little bit right off the bat. The second one is something I just ordered from Amazon. It's a 4-pack of these little stress balls right here. And they have little sayings on them. This one says, take a deep breath. And there are other ones that are like, be calm, be quiet, and something else like that. So anyway, I have 4 of them at home. I only remembered to bring one because I carry one in my backpack. But are
we all gonna give that bad boy a try?
Yeah.
Think so?
So anytime I feel, like I mentioned earlier, I will get shaky or fidgety with my hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I like to have something for my hands that I can kind of hang on to and not, destroy my fingernails or anything like that. So. Oh gosh. Yeah. Those are kind of the 2 things that I'm trying out right now. I think they're working pretty well, and I'm also exploring. Well, what else is out there? What can I try?
Cool.
So for me, what it looks like whenever I start to feel some sort of way, like I said, like whenever I was on the Kuwaiti-Iraqi border, and whenever I came back from over there, I just had it really triggered a whole bunch of things, and I've dealt with it in a very unhealthy way. Mm-hmm. But so whenever I first came to Jesus, and I still kept feeling those things. It was, okay, so what do I do with these emotions? Like, I can't just, think my way through them. There's physical responses to it. So, much like what Madison said, I had to go on medication for multiple years, to just really help at least remove some of the physical things that I was feeling, which allowed me to start really focus on, what is it about my mental reactions to situations that are causing me to feel this way. I needed to work on my thinking. So you started using these 2 verses that really helped me ground myself whenever I would start to feel myself mentally spiral. The first one would be 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 9 and 11. Resist him steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. But may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. To him be the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. So that's the first one that I want to share. But what that one really helped for me, he's talking about Christians being persecuted for their faith. But I think the principle that's being espoused there can be applied in a much broader sense. The same sufferings that you're experiencing now have been experienced by somewhere at some point in time by a follower of Jesus. And if Christ saw them through it, then he will see you through it too. That really helped put my stuff in perspective, because it felt, whenever I was first experiencing those things, it felt like I was the only one that had ever experienced something like this. So it removed it from the what's wrong with me to this is something that a whole lot of people experience and go through.
That's awesome.
The second one was 2 Corinthians 10:5. And I wrote these down, and I would keep them in my wallet, and I would have them as a screensaver on my phone. So whenever I would start to experience something, I could go back and read them and get myself regrounded.
That's smart.
Yeah.
But the second one, 2 Corinthians 10:5, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. For me, that was like, okay, I don't have to be controlled by what I'm thinking or experiencing. Yeah. Like, I can act in spite of it.
Yeah.
And so, like, whenever I would couple those two things together, it was just extremely helpful to remind myself. But I want to reiterate, I also went on medicine for multiple years because it's okay. Yeah. So if you've got any preconceived notion or bias or think like, hey, like medicine's bad, no, medicine is okay. Like, you can go and get medicine. So I needed it, and I wouldn't think twice about going on it if I ever thought I needed to. Yeah.
I kind of accidentally landed with a medication that ended up helping my anxiety. So I had an appointment like quite a while ago, and I had waited forever to be able to get in for a neuro eval. And part of that experience, I think, made me realize like just how weird the things that I was nervous about were, because it would be like the instructor leaving the room like for a portion of time and like leaving me to complete the test. I was being tested for ADHD, and I left with a whole lot more on that list. Anyways, so they would like leave the room, and I'm like, I'm by myself in a safe environment doing something that I chose to do. I want to do. The person is nice. Why am I still spiraling? Mm-hmm. And out of that, I got like the results back of my like anxiety being, I think they said moderate, and my depression being like low, mild. Mm-hmm. But for some reason I was just like, I'm not anxious. I don't know why I chose not to do anything about it then. But last year I really, really struggled and hit a really hard patch of depression, and I ended up going on antidepressants for the first time. And the type of antidepressant that I'm on also has a great effect on my anti-anxiety inner calm. So medicine is great, even if you end up on it accidentally. So that's helped in the way that I kind of control things. I think my number one step is always to just try and identify what am I actually feeling. Mm-hmm. So I really rely on the Wheel of Emotions, which if you just Google Wheel of Emotions, you'll see a million different examples. There is one that I have. I wouldn't know how to say what version of it is, but it's on a sticker that's big enough for me to be able to see everything. And I have it, it's now in my notebook, which I have talked about here before. And I carry it around with me because I really struggle to even acknowledge that I am having emotions in the first place, and then identifying what they are. Yes. So being able to kind of go through and say, like narrow down what, like anxiety is a very broad term, but you can narrow it down a little bit, I think will kind of help me figure out if there's something under the surface that I can cope with. And if it's not, if it's just, I just am anxious and it's non-situational, I do have to kind of go through the elimination of, have I eaten food? Have I drank water? Yeah. Have I drink too much caffeine? Because that can also kind of tip me over into feeling anxious about nothing.
I get like mega jittery.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes make me wonder, like, okay, what exactly is happening in me at the moment?
Yeah. And sometimes I'm not anxious when I drink too much caffeine. Sometimes it does make me anxious. It's just I have to slow down enough to identify what I'm actually feeling. And then having like a routine does really help me. So one of the things that I got to leave that appointment with is a diagnosis of ASD, which it means I'm on the spectrum. So I get to figure out the way that my brain works, which I think everybody's brain works in a unique way. But I feel like folks who are diagnosed neurodivergent have the benefit of being told their brain is a little bit different. So they give themselves that allowance of, okay, how does it work for me? I think it's something that everybody should be doing, is learning the ins and outs of their brain enough. Get to know yourself. Like, you're worth the time.
Something that you mentioned really jumped out, because whenever I mentioned how I do the God I feel statements.
Yeah.
But sometimes if I'm feeling some sort of way, but I don't really know why, it'll be like, God, I feel X, and I don't really know what's going on, but here are the things that are happening right now. But just the fact that whenever I verbalize it and I put it out, and I'm talking out loud that way, it just gets it out of me.
Yeah.
It really helps me lean into cast all your anxieties onto him because he cares for you.
Yeah.
Like, and so it just helps me to visualize myself doing that, because I'm literally just spouting them off into the ether.
I like that. I might have to try that sometime.
That one you can put in your pocket and take with you.
Thank you.
No.
I think I kind of lean on breath prayers sometimes too. So even though this statement is like the breath prayer that I've had on repeat lately, even though it doesn't necessarily address anxiety specifically, I know I've mentioned it before, but while you breathe in, you are saying to yourself, the Lord is my shepherd. And then as you breathe out, you're saying, I have all that I need. And I think it's just that, I think it's probably a version of that, of like turning and recognizing that, like, I don't have to make the decisions. Like, he's leading me. He's got it. I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that I'm under his care, and that can help. It, again, all depends on the situation that I'm going through. But sticking to my routine, professional help, amazing. Like those are the biggest things. And then coping ahead.
Oh, what is that one?
I didn't know it was a thing until my therapist told me about it. And it's the simplest concept ever. But basically, he told me, think through, like, okay, you're worried about worst case scenario? Think about it. Yeah. What if it happens? What are you going to do? You just let yourself mentally think, how would I cope with the worst case scenario? Because I think a lot of times my anxiety, when it is situational, it's so focused in what could happen, that if I mentally put myself in the place of bad thing happened. Bad thing happened, what do now? Then I actually
bad thing happened, what do now?
Yeah, then I go into problem solving
That's
mode.
a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Or a sticker for your computer.
Thank you. Really funny. Basically, coping ahead, like, put yourself in that situation. Let yourself cope with worst case scenario, because your brain wants to go into problem solving mode for a reason. Let it problem solve, and then, it might help and it might not, but it's worked for me in like the big picture anxiety of, like, I don't know what the next 5 years is going to look like. Okay, so worst case scenario, my car breaks down, my house catches on fire, I lose my job, I have no money, what's going to happen? I still got God. Like, okay. Like, it's still, like, there's tough things ahead, but it lets me put myself in that place and say, actually, I am capable of figuring that out, because I figured out a lot of other things before.
There's something called, I want to say, I might get it wrong, like acceptance. What is it? It's like acceptance. It's in the same vein as like cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's like an offshoot of it, like acceptance therapy.
I don't know.
So where you you kind of go on the outs, like you kind of look at it from the outside, kind of like what you just did, what you just kind of described. Okay, so 5 years from now, like instead of spiraling inside of your mind, put yourself at like a 30,000 foot, like third person view of yourself, and then just kind of look at like, okay, and then just kind of problem solve. Give your space to like look at it and do it. Accept whatever might come mentally inside yourself, and then just say okay, and then you just keep moving forward.
Oh.
Is it ACT?
Yes.
Acceptance and commitment therapy?
Yes.
Ah.
That's kind of what it
Intriguing.
made me think about whenever you were
Yeah,
mentioning that.
I'm going to have to look into that. That sounds super interesting.
Now, I could be way off, but that's kind of sounded like what you were just mentioning.
Well, if coping ahead is a version of that, then that might be a good new tool for me. So, yeah having tools, great.
Yes.
Having professional help, great. The emotions wheel in particular has been super helpful for me.
But being able to do that even if, because that's kind of like what you're doing from, you know, I think it's Daniel 4, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah.
Like, even if God does, like, God's capable of saving me through this thing, but even if he doesn't, I'm still going to be okay.
Yeah. Objectively speaking, because of my beliefs and my faith in who God is and what he's done for me, worst case scenario, I go to heaven.
Like, and
what am I worried about?
Like, being able to say, like, I will still be fine. Because, like, my breath prayer is usually, like, God brought me here, he will see me through.
Yeah. And to be, as a disclaimer, that it can, I feel like what I just said can feel like it's minimizing anxiety. In the moment, or people who are dealing with chronic anxiety that is heavy, like debilitating, ever present in their life, thinking through worst case scenario might not be helpful for you. However, if you are talking to a professional and they seem like this strategy might work for you, then it might work. And we are not professionals.
And it's all about finding out what it works, what it looks like for you, and then what works for you. Like for me, it was a combination of medicine, counseling, and a heavy reliance on my faith.
Yeah.
Like, it was a 3-pronged attack for me to be able to get through it, because there was a long period of time where I physically would get sick at the thought of going to the grocery store. Like, and so I had to get like on medicine, start working through my faith, and then eventually got to where, okay, well, now I can go talk to somebody, because now I'm not crippled to the point to where I can't go actually talk about what's going on. And I wouldn't have had a vocabulary or a starting point to do that from. Had I not done the other things first.
I think that I've had like a kind of a similar experience, but I don't know. I think I've had like this very narrow range where I'm actually able to figure out and address things as an adult, which is like it's a great starting place. So like you said, you referenced that you really started experiencing an issue with anxiety when you were in your mid-20s. Yeah. So I feel like that's, again, could be wrong, not a professional. I feel like that's a common thing that I hear from men. I think because of when our brains finish developing, a lot of psychological problems, whether they are like genetic or you're kind of experiencing them because you've walked through life, they can show up in your mid-20s.
Yeah. Well, I mean, mine was unpacking a lot of undealt with stuff from whenever I was a kid that I didn't really recognize until I was further down the road. And then not having a vocabulary to describe what I was feeling. Like, if you don't have words to, like, name things with, like, they just exist in you, but you don't know what to do with them until you reach some sort of mental break, which is what I experienced. And then it was like, okay, so now what do I do with this from here?
Yeah. I think that because I've heard so many different people experience similar things where all of a sudden they hit, like, true adulthood, for lack of a better word. All of a sudden they're facing things that they haven't put words to, they haven't understood before, but now they're figuring out how to deal with it as an adult. I feel like it makes sense to, even if you're not currently struggling with anxiety, explore some of the tools and options. Like, because you never know when something might pop up, and you gotta pull a tool out of your back pocket, or connect with a friend who needs some help and you have some approaches. Yeah,
I think there's still. I think it's true that a certain kind of stigma still exists around this topic, right?
Especially for men.
Yes, for sure. And so I think it's common for people to think, like, I don't even want to think about this, because if this is something I struggle with, then I'm weird. or something's wrong with me. Things along those lines. And like, I think if there's one thing that I could say, that's not true. You're not weird. There's nothing wrong with you. If anything, you're doing the best thing you can, which is you're identifying, okay, or you're even just exploring. Maybe this is something I struggle with. Let me see what I can find out, and let me see what I can put in place to cope with that and what works for me.
Half the battle is just acknowledging that it's there.
Yeah.
Yes.
The worst thing you can do is nothing about it, So, I work with students here at our church, and part of the process of this becoming real for me was seeing how much they deal with it. Because teenagers, man, they deal with this stuff like crazy. Crazy. So,
And the first time that I heard our senior pastor, Brian Hughes, talk about it from the platform, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like some of his struggles and battles with it. And it made me feel a whole lot better it made me feel valid in like what I was feeling and what I was going through. And it really helped me to start taking next steps to addressing what it was I was exactly, like what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
I just kind of assumed it's always been present in my life. And so I kind of just assumed that was most people's interactions with like anxiety. I just kind of thought my baseline was kind of like my mom wondering why I was freaking out. Like I thought that was my normal. And so it's interesting for me to hear that there's so many different experiences, even if you know that it's true. Like listening to people's individual stories can have like such a positive effect on your relationship with your brain and giving yourself space, and also being able to be present for people in all different kinds of life stages.
All right, so to wrap up, medicine is okay. Like talking about it with someone's okay. Mm-hmm. Relying on your faith, okay.
Yep.
And then if bad happened, what do good? What was that?
Bad thing happened, what do now?
Something
like that. Yeah.
Tools.
Yes, tools are good, yes.
Well, we hope that this has been helpful for everybody watching us, and leave us a review. Find us in our Facebook group, and if you do leave us a review and we read it, we got a mug that'll come your way. And we'll see you guys back here next week for another episode of The After Chat.
Thanks for joining us for The After Chat. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To be the first to hear our next episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for new content. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram at PCC Wired and Facebook at Passion Community Church. For additional resources and links, check out the description. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The After Chat.